Having done a few videos at this point and also having appeared on a few other live streams with some friends of mine, one of the questions I keep getting is, what gear am I using? Well, figured I'd start today with my webcam. Obviously, that was a joke. It's real, but not as a webcam. No, this is the Canon 1DX2. This is one of my favorite weapons in photography. Very versatile piece. Love it to death with the 70 to 200 millimeter great white, the L series zoom. Use that for a lot of fast action photography. Don't use that for this. What I'm actually on right now, what you're watching me on right now, is also a Canon, but it's the Eos M50, the first generation. I've had an Eos M since the first generation of it, the original Eos M. The Eos M50, we're probably about now 6 generations deep in the M line. So this is the second one that I've purchased in total, but great camera. So if you're looking for, I hear people talking about wanting to use DSLRs and things like that, and that's all great. DSLRs, especially for webcam applications, is a bit bulky and overkill. What you really want is a compact MILC. That's a mirrorless, interchangeable lens camera. Basically the same thing as a DSLR in terms of having lenses that you can switch out, and also has a larger APS-C size sensor in this case, but it doesn't have the big mirror box inside of it, adding unnecessary room that you don't need for a webcam application like this. So this Eos M50 is mounted on a pole right behind one of my 2 monitors, and I'll try to put up a picture in here while we do this video so you can kind of see the setup. And then towards the other side, I have another pole mounted with a clamp and an LED panel light. Very simple setup. And the camera itself runs at 2997 frames per second. I'm using it ISO 200. The lens on the camera is a 22 millimeter f2 lens. It's the Pancake EOS F or the EOS EFM lens on that one. And I've got a lot of camera gear. So I actually had the lens sitting around from the old EOS M camera. I got the new M50 because I wanted something that worked with Canon's newer software packages, because one of the things Canon developed last year was the Eos Webcam Utility, which instead of having to pump an Eos M50 in this case through a video capture device via HDMI and then into the computer, I can now push the Eos M50 directly with the USB-C output on it straight into the computer. The Eos Webcam software picks it up, and it's natively compatible both with Streamlabs and StreamYards. Boom. Done. Now, for those of you, while we're on the topic, looking to up the camera game that you're using, the video game, okay, if you're going to invest in a dedicated, legitimate camera, okay, as opposed to a small Logitech or some other kind of compatible webcam, they're great. They do a fine job. I think they do a fine job if you're just doing basic video conferencing and things like that for work. I don't think you need to spend a lot. I do think that if you're actually going to want to be on YouTube and be, you know, if you really want to make a go at this and you really want to look good and try to drive traffic, then go for it. But invest in a legitimate camera. And you don't have to buy a brand new one. In fact, the Eos M50 that I'm on right now, I found used on eBay. It's a great place. I mean, short of the camera being broken, there's nothing wrong with buying a used piece of equipment. Not to mention the fact that as the Eos M50 Mark II is more recently out, there's a lot of users that are investing in the newer Eos M cameras, and they're selling their old Eos M50s. Again, that's just one example. Sony Alpha has some great cameras as well. There's some other ones out there from Olympus and Pentax, although they're getting out of the market. But you can find other cameras. I would just urge you to find one that, if possible, is directly compatible video out to your computer or has software that can do that and that is compatible with whatever software you're using to live stream on YouTube. So just take that into consideration. Because when you move from a small little USB $200 webcam to a legitimate camera that you may have to spend $400 or $500 on, maybe a little bit more to get a good lens with it, you know, you're going to also get a much bigger sensor. It's not a full frame sensor like the first camera I pulled up. It's not a full frame sensor like this. This is the Canon EOS 1DX Mark II. big giant sensor. It's equivalent to the plane of a 35 millimeter piece of film, whereas an APS-C size sensor is about 40 to 50% smaller, depending on the camera maker, depending on the exact sensor size. But for all intents and purposes, you're talking about half the area on an APS-C is full frame. And again, full frame, not necessary at all for this application. But even an APS-C size sensor is going to be significantly larger than the one that you're going to get on a small, webcam, quote unquote. And it's going to give you a much better image, that's for sure. Again, my camera settings are pretty simple. My camera is set to run at about 30 frames a second or 2997 if you have that. It's running at full HD, 1080p, and pretty much it. As far as the aperture and ISO settings, the aperture is at f2, and I'm running it at 1/60th of a second. Because if you're running at 30 frames a second, you need to run your shutter speed at twice that, at least in the denominator. 30 frames a second, you get 1/60th of a second. If I was running at 24 FPS, like I do when I shoot some commercial work, making, short commercial pieces, and I want that film look, I'll run it at 24 FPS like every Hollywood movie made out there still is doing. And at 24 FPS, you'd run your shutter speed at 1/50th of a second. Oh, and before I forget, if you do get a DSLR or an MILC or any kind of dedicated camera that requires its own battery or power source, make sure when you buy it, you can find either one from that manufacturer or an aftermarket power source that can be plugged in as AC power. Because there's no way you could do this. My camera, my EOS M50 is not running on batteries. I found an extra $20, $25, $30. Basically, it's an AC adapter that mocks a battery. You pop it in, you plug it in. It looks just like the Canon battery, and you plug it into the wall. And that's it. You've got AC power for the camera. So make sure you invest in one of those if you do that. Now, the audio side, a little bit more complicated. And it really all depends on your level of comfort and how much you want to learn how to fiddle with. Now, I'm a guy that's been around audio gear for a long time. So for me, figuring out microphones, microphone preamps, using optical compressors and things like that, I can do that. For most people, I think the comfort level is going to be a USB microphone with computer software that'll do a lot of that for you automatically. Although, if you do want to be able to have the capability of getting the best sound possible, you need to go the traditional route and do most of that processing on the front end before the quantization happens, meaning when your analog voice gets turned into a digital stream of ones and zeros in the computer, you want to have a lot of that tonal shaping before all of that happens, because that's how you're going to get the best result. So for my system right now, and I'm in the midst of changing it, is my current microphone, and I'll try to pick it up here so you can see it. That is the Rode Procaster. Now, Rode is an Australian manufacturer of some fine audio gear. I have quite a few Rode microphones in my arsenal. I have 2 or 3 that are dedicated for, that work with my cameras. I have a Rode Video NTG mini shotgun mic that goes on top of my camera rig, my run-and-gun rig, which is a Canon R6, and an Atomos Ninja 5 as the recorder. I also have a Rode NTG3, which is the long telecondenser shotgun microphone, which is the ones you often see alongside Sennheisers and Audio-Technicas on major television and Hollywood production studio sets, where you see the guys with the big booms and the microphone on the end with the windsock on. It looks, they call it the dead cat. It's a big piece of fur. It's to be a windbreak. That's basically what the Rode NTG3 is. But for this one, the Rode Procaster, and there's some others too. I've got some Rode K2 tube microphones that are just awesome, but I use those for music recording. But this works great. And I wanted a simple front end to where I didn't have to have a whole bunch of equipment here on my desk to fool with. So at first, I've been using up to this point, it's a PreSonus studio channel. And the PreSonus studio channel is kind of an all-in-one, where you've got a pretty good mic preamp. It's a tube preamp with a 12XA7 tube, a common type tube. Now you can replace the one that it comes with a better tube, and that's fine. You can replace those pretty easily. But it has a built-in automatic compression. You can also do manual compression on it to make sure that the loudness and softness of your voice as you speak kind of gets evened out, so you're not blowing out the microphone 1 minute and you can't hear yourself the next. It has a little bit of a parametric EQ on it, not too much, but it is analog out. So I do have to use a second piece of equipment until now, which is a Focusrite Scarlet Solo. Now, if you just want to make things simple and you want to get a microphone like the Rode Procaster, go right into a Focusrite Scarlet Solo, then go for it, because that's a great little mic preamp. And you can still do a decent enough job, especially if you're going through StreamYards where they automatically level the mic for you. It'll still come out pretty good. It'll still you'll get used to gaining it. Now, we'll say with the Rode Procaster, it does take a pretty beefy mic preamp. That's the only thing you have to know. You have to know about it. It does need it does need more power than most microphones, and don't use 48-volt phantom power with those. Maybe some other mics, you probably can get away with less power. Like you'll see a lot of people on YouTube with the Shure. I think it's the SM-B7. But in any case, I love this mic. But that's it. That's the audio front end. Now on the back end, audio coming out, hey, I've got other stuff. I've got a Cambridge Audio DAC Magic Plus as my audio processor for sound coming out. And then I've got a pair of Atom Audio Studio monitors on the sides here. I'll try to show that picture again so you can see, but that's on the output side. That has no effect on your ability to get on YouTube. But yeah, I think the most important thing is get yourself a good microphone and learn how to use it. And that's the most important thing. You don't want to be sitting 2 feet away from it. You don't want to be you've got to learn your distance and everything. It's just, look, there's good videos out there on YouTube that'll teach you how to use a microphone, how to use a good quality vocal microphone. And from there, the rest of it's pretty simple. So anyway, that's it. Just wanted to make a quick video here because I've had so many questions on what's the gear I'm using, and what am I on and all this. But just to understand, yeah, I didn't just show up YouTube and buy all this stuff just to do this. I have this stuff laying around because this is what I love to do, is kind of a second job. It's a paying hobby, I'll call it. So anyway, take care. Catch you next time.